Hey, how's it going, fight fans? Welcome to Mindful Combat. If this is the first time you checked out my channel or any of my content, why don't you consider joining my growing fight community by hitting the subscribe button and getting involved with the conversation below. So for this video, I had been thinking about some ideas of stuff I wanted to do. And I'm going to be doing a couple of breakdowns on some key fights coming up, like Edson Barboza versus Justin Gaethje. But generally, it's kind of a quiet month in the world of mixed martial arts. Sorry, getting a little bit tongue-tied there, but yeah, it's a bit of a quiet month in the world of mixed martial arts. And there's a couple of cards coming up, and I'm going to be talking about them in some of my live streams. So they're going to make great discussion points for us to have as a general conversation. That's what my live streams are. They're just general conversations with me and you guys. And so check those out. But so I came up with an idea, and that idea was to go through what my personal top 5 greatest mixed martial artists of all time are. So before I go into my list and say who my top 5 are, I just want to be clear about a couple of things. Firstly, I've always stood firm on the belief that if you test positive for steroids once, twice, or any time at all, you're out of the discussion of any great. You cannot be in the discussion of being the greatest of all time if you tested positive for steroids, because there's a question mark next to all your wins, your legacies, your achievements. You might have done incredible things, and I might have really enjoyed watching you fight, but the moment you test positive for steroids once or twice, there's questions about your achievements and your legacy and everything that you've done, and it kind of burns, because some of my favorite fighters of all time have tested positive for steroids and they're not going to be on the list. So if there's any guys on the missing from the list, like blatantly obvious ones such as John Jones and Anderson Silva, that's why they're not going to be on my list, because they have tested positive for steroids. Secondly, of course, this is my personal top 5 greatest mixed martial artists of all times. So this is a very subjective list. It's not objective, it's subjective. It's my personal opinion. I'll actually be interested to see what you guys think in the comment section below. Give me your top 5 list of top 5 greatest mixed martial artists of all time, and tell me if you disagree with me or tell me if you agree with me, and then we can go through it, and I engage in conversation with everyone that comments below. So I'll be interested to know what you guys think as well. So anyways, I've got a piece of paper in front of me, so I might be looking down a bit through this video, so don't mind that. I do tend to memorize most of my data. I know most everything off the top of my head. I take a lot of pride in that, but this is going to be a long list. I'm going to go into some details about each fighter, and I'm only human, so bear with that. Okay, so let's get into it, guys. So firstly, at number 5, I have Randy, the Natural Couture. Now, any mixed martial arts fan knows who Randy Couture is. Oh, actually, just quickly, I want to say sorry about this kind of unprofessional here, but for me, when I'm discussing an all-time great, the preface is your accomplishments, your achievements, how you've done it, and the impact you've made on the sport. So that's some of the stuff I'm considering. Sorry guys, sorry if I'm all over the place. Maybe that's got a charm to it, I don't know. Anyways, so number 5, Randy the Natural Couture. Randy the Natural Couture. If you know anything about mixed martial arts, or if you've been around for any length of time, Randy Couture is an absolute legend of the game. He retired in 2011 off his, when he lost to Lyoto Machida at UFC 129 in a historic card where GSP beat Jake Shields. And that was a sad way to go out for Randy Couture. Randy Couture now, he retired with a record of 19 wins and 11 losses. Now, whilst that might not seem like the best of records, we can't look at it in the eyes of the records that we see today. So now obviously you see Khabib Nurmagomedov go 27-0. You see guys like Gregor Gillespie is 15-0. There's guys on undefeated streaks. Thomas Almeida got to 21-0. Guys go on undefeated records these days. But there's a lot more padding in their records than there was in the days of Randy Couture. So for example, Randy Couture practically debuted into a heavyweight tournament. His 4th fight was for a world title. He was fighting for world titles practically every other fight from his 2nd pro fight. So he was fighting at a very high level of mixed martial arts, respectively to the time that he fought in, from practically his 2nd pro fight. So his record is 19-11. Don't let that fool you. Randy Couture is absolutely incredible. Some of his achievements: he won the UFC 13 heavyweight tournament. it's key to note that that kind of takes you back to how long ago Randy Couture actually debuted, and he was already 34 years old when he debuted. That's incredible. So he won the heavyweight tournament, which is great. He was a 3-time UFC heavyweight champion. 3 heavyweight titles he won in his career, and he was a smaller heavyweight. So much of a smaller heavyweight actually that he went down to light heavyweight and won the light heavyweight title on 2 different occasions. Randy Couture won 5 world titles and a UFC heavyweight tournament. That's incredible. When we're looking at some of his key wins, we're talking Vitor Belfort twice. He beat Chuck Liddell. He beat Tito Ortiz when Tito Ortiz was the world champion and fought to be the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. He beat Kevin Randleman, Tim Sylvia when he came out of retirement in, 45 years old, and dropped Tim Sylvia on his arse and then dominated him and got the victory. He beat Brandon Vera after that. Brandon Vera is still doing good stuff in one championship now. So Randy Couture, number 5, an all-time great, one of my personal favourites of all time. Also an all-round great guy, seemed like a gent in and out of the ring. Just what a great guy he was, and the sport was so much better to have him around, and I felt honoured that I could watch him in his career. At number 4, I got Daniel DC Cormier. Daniel Cormier he is such a great fighter. I really hope the legacy of his career, and he isn't remembered by his 2 fights with John Bones Jones. Daniel Cormier is one of my favorite fighters of all time, and just looking at his accomplishments is incredible. And we're not even outside of the ring, but let's just talk about MMA, yeah? So MMA, he's got a professional record of 22 wins and 1 loss. That 1 loss is to John Bones Jones, who's tested positive for steroids twice, and John Bones Jones is practically unbeaten as of the time of this video. He's practically unbeatable. So that loss, you know, it doesn't really impact his legacy to me too much. I think it's worth noting the importance of Daniel Cormier's career and everything that he's done. He's got a record of 22 and 1. Let's go through some of his accomplishments, and I'm not even going to talk about stuff like him winning some ex-MMA heavyweight title. Let's forget that. Let's talk with key accomplishments. He won the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix, came in as an alternate, knocked out when he knocked out Bigfoot Silva. He was at 8-0 at the time, and wow, that he really surprised the world. So he won the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix. He won the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship, and he's won the UFC Heavyweight Championship. He's become a simultaneous 2-way world champion in the UFC. Knocked out Stipe Miocic, and then he's gone on to defend Derek Lewis. Daniel Cormier he's an all-round great guy, great mixed martial artist, and when we're looking at some of his key wins, I alluded to this earlier, Bigfoot Silva. Don't take Bigfoot Silva as we know him today. Look back at the time when Bigfoot Silva, he was 16-2 coming into the fight. He had just beaten Fedor Emelianenko. Fedor, who had only 1 loss at the time to I just had his win streak snapped anyway to Fabricio Werdum, which was his second. Anyway, we'll get into Fedor. But yeah, he had just beaten Fedor. Emelianenko was ranked really high. He was the known commodity. Daniel Cormier was only 8-0 coming into the fight. He was a huge underdog. He came in and put a stomp on Bigfoot Silva. He beat Josh Barnett on the back of that. Josh Barnett, who was on an 8-fight win streak at the time. Probably won another all-time great heavyweight. Obviously, he's got the positive steroid test as well, so he won't be in any list of my writing anyway. And other than Josh Barnett, we're talking Frank Mir, Dan Hendo Henderson, Anthony Johnson on 2 different occasions, and Rumble Johnson at 205 was practically unbeaten except for Daniel Cormier. Like that's incredible. So that's great win. He beat Alexander Gustafsson. He obviously went up and knocked out Stipe Miocic, who had 3 world title defenses at heavyweight, which is a record, and Stipe Miocic deserves claims to greatness in his own right. So Daniel Cormier is incredible. I really hope he ain't remembered by the situation with John Bones Jones. But anyway, Daniel Cormier. At number 3, I got one of my personal favourites, and a guy just like Daniel Cormier who's still active, is Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. And it seems a lot of people had a problem with Demetrious Johnson in account that they have some insecurities about seeing smaller men fighting and kicking ass. I don't know what those insecurities are about. You've got to deal with them personally. Do you, bro? I have no issue with seeing smaller fighters. I love Demetrious Johnson. I love the 125 weight class. I hope they keep it around in the UFC. But Demetrious Johnson leaving the UFC, whilst that's huge for one championship, it's alright for me because I'm a huge one championship fan. It kind of sucks that we're not going to be getting to see Demetrious Johnson have a trilogy. Henry Cejudo, I think that's a fight he could really win. And Demetrious Johnson, for my money, is one of the greatest of all time. Well, I've got him at number 3 as the greatest of all time. He's got a record of 27 wins, 3 losses and 1 draw, which is absolutely incredible. 31 pro fights, only lost 3, spent a lot of time fighting at bantamweight. All those guys are huge compared to him. Just look at him stood next to Dominic Cruz. Look at him. He shouldn't be here fighting at that weight class. and he still had success. He won the UFC Flyweight Championship. He was the first flyweight champion, and he holds the record for most title defenses with 11 world title defenses and some absolutely spectacular performances. Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. Some of his key wins include Kid Yamamoto, Miguel Torres, Ian Uncle Creepy McCall, who was practically regarded as the number one 125er when he first came into the UFC. He was coming off a win over Juicy Omega in his own right, so that was a big win at the time. He beat Joseph Benavidez twice, who's still around now, still top 5, still a great win. He beat Henry Cejudo. He beat Koji Horiguchi. He's doing great stuff over in Ryzen right now, so check him out. And he's absolutely dominant all those wins. I'm really excited about seeing his career continue. I really appreciate Demetrious Johnson in and outside of the cage. He's a good family man, honourable, no steroid tests, and that's what it's all about. Demetrious Johnson at number 3. At number 2 is the legendary Fedor Emelianenko. Fedor Emelianenko is an all-time great, widely regarded as a cult hero in mixed martial arts almost, because he never fought in the UFC, and he's the only person in this list, my list, of course, it's my subjective list, who never fought in the UFC. And to me, you don't need to have fought in the UFC to have achieved greatness. It's about who you beat to achieve that greatness. And Fedor Emelianenko, the bulk of his prime was spent in a time when you didn't need to fight in the UFC to be fighting the best fighters in the world, because at the time, if you're new to mixed martial arts, practically all the best heavyweights were in Pride. At the time when Fedor was the Pride heavyweight champion, Tim Sylvia and Andrei Arlovski were taking turns knocking each other out and then having a real boring fight. So Fedor Emelianenko was the unquestionable number 1 heavyweight at the time. He went on an incredible win streak. I believe he won 27 fights in a row at one point at heavyweight. That's absolutely insane. A lot of people like to question his level of competition, but he got some great wins in there. We're going to go through some of his key wins. But at the time of this video, Fedor Emelianenko's record is 38 wins and 6 losses. He's probably going to fight one more time before he retires. I hope he has a fight in Russia, a winnable fight, and then he can ride off into the sunset. But Fedor Emelianenko, some of his key achievements, he won the Rings 2001 heavyweight tournament, and he was a Pride heavyweight champion where he defended it on 3 different occasions. And then when he won the WAMA, the World Alliance of Mixed Martial Arts heavyweight title, which was the title that Affliction was promoting at the time, and he beat Tim Sylvia to win it. Obviously, don't look at it with revisionist history. Tim Sylvia was top 5 at the time, 1 fight removed from fighting for the UFC heavyweight title. And then he knocked out Andrei Arlovski, who was on a 5-fight win streak at the time, was ranked top 5 for a long time, and that was a very, very pivotal win at the time. So his accomplishments are respectable, and his key wins now. Let's go through some of his key wins. He beat Renato Barbaluso Brau for the UFC light heavyweight title on one or two different occasions. He beat Tim Sylvia, like I said, Andrei Arlovski, like I said, both former UFC heavyweight champions. He beat Semi Shield, for my money, one of the greatest K1 kickboxers of all time. He beat Antonio Minotauro Nogueira, who, other than Fedor at the time when they were fighting in the early to mid 2000s, was the only other top heavyweight outside of Fedor, and Fedor beat him on 2 different occasions. He beat Mirko Cro Cop in my favorite heavyweight fight of all time. That was a huge fight at the time, and rightfully so. It was an incredible fight between 2 incredible guys at the prime of their careers. They collided. It was an incredible fight. He beat Kevin Randleman and Mark Coleman. So Fedor Emelianenko has beaten a lot of great guys, and even more recently he beat Frank Mir and Chael Sonnen. I suppose given the stage of his career and given the stage of their careers, it's respectable for him to get them wins now. So, and he made it all the way to the finals of their Bellator heavyweight title tournament. So he remains competitive even now. So Fedor Emelianenko at number 2. Now, my personal greatest mixed martial artist of all time is George Russ St Pierre. George Russ St Pierre has never tested positive for steroids. There's never been no controversy about him getting drunk, crashing cars, or just doing any kind of crazy stuff. He's never been caught, tested positive for cocaine, nothing. He's handled himself very, very honourably inside the cage and outside the cage. He seemed like a complete gentleman. I've really enjoyed George St Pierre, his blend of being a superstar, and he showed the world that he can be a superstar without having to be an asshole. And I really appreciate George St Pierre for everything that he done and everything that he achieved. I'm a huge George St Pierre fan, and for me, he is the number 1 mixed martial artist of all time. He's got he retired with a professional record. Only recently he retired. He retired with a professional record of 25 wins and 2 losses. Some of his key achievements: he won the UFC welterweight tournament, welterweight world championship on 2 different occasions. He also won the interim welterweight championship, which he unified. So I suppose you can say he was a 3-time world champion. I'll say 2 because interim, you know. He also went up after a 4-year layoff, came out of a 4-year layoff, went straight up to fight the world champion in the weight division above his, and won by finish against Michael Bisping, who at the time was the most winningest fighter in the history of the UFC. So that was a huge win for Georges St Pierre. And he got 9 title defenses of his world championship. So it weren't about winning titles in multiple weight classes and not defending them. He won it, he defended his belts, he cemented his place. Now let's look at some of his key wins. He beat BJ Penn on 2 different occasions, who in his own right has a claim to greatness. He beat Matt Hughes on 2 different occasions to avenge his loss on 2 different occasions, who also has his own claim to greatness. Oh, by the way, let me just quickly go back and say he never had any unrevenged losses in his career either, which is a great statistic. So yeah, Matt Hughes, who's got his own claims to greatness. Michael Bisping, who's got his own claim to greatness. Nick Diaz, Carlos Condit, Sean the Muscle Shark Shirk, who was a lightweight world champion in the UFC. He beat Johnny Hendricks at the time when Johnny Hendricks was knocking everyone silly. I don't care what anyone says, Georges St Pierre won that fight under the 10-point must system, 5 rounds. Georges St Pierre won 3 of the 5 rounds. He wins. Okay. He beat John Fitch when John Fitch was on an 8-fight win streak in the UFC. He beat Josh Koscheck not once but twice. Josh Koscheck was ranked at top 5, and he beat Jake Shields when Jake Shields was on a 15-fight win streak, and he's got his own claim to greatness at welterweight. So for me, my money, everything that Georges St Pierre done in cage, how he represented himself outside the cage, his contribution to mixed martial arts, and the impact he had on mixed martial arts in Canada. He is the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. And remember, guys, this is my personal subjective list, my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Comment in the section below. I'll drop some honorable mentions in a comment in the comment section below. So let me know what you guys think. Comment below. Challenge me on any of this. I'll get involved in the discussion with you guys. And thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys. Mind for Combat.